Hello, and welcome to the Back Room, where we talk about politics around the world, across the country, and right here in the Bronx. I'm Lisa Schiffren, your host, a former Republican speechwriter.
I'm David Eisenbach, presidential historian.
And tonight we have with us the Reverend Michael Blake, who is running for mayor of New York in the June primary, who will be joining us.
Hello, Michael. Last time I saw you was when we were both running in the 2019 special election for public advocate to fill Tish James' seat. And I want to say, among the politicians, you were the friendliest and the most genuine of all the candidates. So it's great to see you're running again for mayor.
Great to see you. Really appreciate that, and really appreciated the camaraderie you had on the campaign trail. It was a blessing.
It was.
It'd be great to hear a little bit about what you're running on, what you want to do for New York City.
You know, as a former assembly member for the Bronx, as a former White House aide to President Obama, as a reverend, as a community leader, I'm running for mayor because I want to help New Yorkers make and keep more money in their pocket. I want to be very focused on how we reduce the cost of living. And I want to reimagine what's happening in our city so that you can actually have a mayor that you can trust, because we deserve better. We're not getting back enough. We can accomplish these things in very specific ways. First, I'm the only person in this race who has actually defeated Donald Trump. When Donald Trump was president and I was the vice chair of the DNC, our team with Tom Perez as our chair and me as a vice chair, actually defeated his foolishness and what was happening across the country, which people want to know who's going to be a fighter for them. We could talk very specifically around what are we doing around the true cost of living. And if you help businesses to make more money so that they can hire more people, if we help focus on increasing the wages for individuals, and then we take the steps to ensure that we're reducing actual costs of what's happening for our communities who are challenged with cost of eggs and cost of milk, that's how you can change the game for our people. We want to focus very simply around affordable housing, because we can make sure that's a focus, as well as around, again, public safety, public education. So to your question, we deserve better than what we're getting right now. And if we want a new generation of leadership, that is why I'm running for mayor.
What about crime? What are you going to do about crime?
Public safety is a critical element of this. As we understand, we have to change this because people don't feel safe. You have to have an increased street patrol of our police officers with body cameras on, ensuring that you allow for officers to see what's happening within the community without us return to stop and frisk, because that led to a lot of unconstitutional behavior. But we can be very focused on how we can actually have increased street patrol with body cameras on, so that then that frees up to have mental health professionals actually addressing the mental health crisis that's happening in our subways and our streets.
What about bringing back bail?
Well, no, bringing back bail, but bail does exist. In terms of, to your question around revisions around bail, there have to be changes around bail reform, around speedy trial and discovery, so that we are ensuring that repeat offenders are not getting out as easily as they have been.
On the crime issue, it's always struck me as, people feel unsafe, but at the same time, New Yorkers don't want to give up, civil liberties, and we don't want to return to the days of stop and frisk, as you said. So where do you find your happy medium in terms of policing right and justly, but effectively?
More cops does not lead to better policing. What we need is better policing. And so when we think about what has to happen here, first, how do we address the economic conditions in a community? Because if someone has more money in their pocket, it becomes very unlikely that they want to pursue a path of stealing and robbery and violence, because they have their own economic condition that is in place. Second, we also have to address the mental health concerns on the front end, because if we're not serious about that, we are seeing communities that are going awry in too many areas. So then when we take the next step, have a focus around community policing, hiring more officers to be engaged in the process without increasing the budget, because as we saw last year, you had a $1.4 billion NYPD overtime budget, in large part because you had officers who felt like no one is actually helping me. Why would I take the steps here if someone is going to be out tomorrow? Then what leads to that is people actually not feeling like there's officers that are proactively seeing what's going on in the community. So you have to address the before, during, and the after. And then lastly, it's about the comprehensive vision around Rikers Island. You have to close Rikers Island and have borough-based jails. It makes more sense by having individuals that are closer to courthouses in their respective boroughs, because Rikers Island, quite frankly, is inhumane. It's the reason why the federal government has repeatedly been talking about a federal takeover. And so if you're not also addressing that, that's tied to the public safety concerns, because if all we're doing is strengthening someone to be a better criminal rather than a better human being, you're actually not addressing the underlying issues at the same time.
How do you stop them from being a better criminal?
By stopping the foolishness at Rikers Island. You have a process right now where someone is going in and being in a facility where they're actually not being rehabilitated, they're being held. And so you're creating a scenario of, well, why is someone there in the first place? Overwhelmingly.
And rehabilitation comes with borough-based jails?
Absolutely. That's been done all across the country. It's the reason why it works. Because you think about it, at the end of the day, if you have an individual who has to travel a long distance to get to their court hearing, if there's any delay in that process, there's a likelihood that that person then will be staying at Rikers and other facility longer than they could have and should have. And so why not then be intentional around the courthouses that already exist in our boroughs and have facilities connected to that, so that the individual is going straight to the courthouse. You're reducing also the pathway and the timeliness for the lawyer, which impacts our public defenders who need to have more support as well. If we take those concrete steps, you're actually making it better for a comprehensive accountability rather than what's happening right now.
As you know, there are lots of communities where the borough-based jails would be located, and I'm thinking Chinatown, for example, in downtown Manhattan. Residents there are against these new jails, and what do you say to those communities that would be directly affected?
That you can make it a point that you're containing what's happening in these places. Think about this: when I'm walking by the courthouse on 161st Street, I don't see what's happening on the inside. Everything is contained. When I'm walking past a school, I don't see what's happening on the inside. Everything is contained. So the narrative and the notion that's existing of people are just going to be running the streets is just not true. It's a foolish talking point. It's just simply not accurate, right? But people have this thought in their mind that these criminals are just going to be running amok across our streets. No, actually, that's not going to be the case. Now, simultaneously, not only will you be able to make the process fairer, not just for the individual that's been incarcerated, but for the lawyer and public defender that's representing them, but then you're also able to negotiate with the city and state for more community benefits to come to you. And so at the end of the day, if we're serious about addressing public safety and crime in a holistic way, it's not just about addressing it on the front end. It's not just about addressing it while someone is incarcerated. It's about making sure that on the back end, communities are able to thrive at a greater degree. In the exact same way, when a developer is coming into a community and you have to negotiate community benefits through your community board, there'd be no reason why we would not be taking a similar kind of approach by what we're discussing here today.
You know what, as a separate matter, do you believe New York should be a sanctuary city?
1,000%, because New York City is a city of what we are because we welcome immigrants. And we have allowed a narrative to exist, unfortunately, from the Republican Party that immigration is bad. Let me be very clear.
No, I think that the Republican Party believes that illegal immigration is bad and legal immigration is fine.
That's just not accurate, because the reality is the sanctuary city revocal and conversation is not coming from Democrats. It's been coming from Republicans. So let's be clear. The sanctuary city status of being a city that is embracing our immigrants, no one is saying, let's embrace criminals. People are not doing that, right? The reality is, are we embracing our women, our children, our families, our young men that are trying to turn their lives around, while simultaneously holding individuals accountable who are actually taken out when it comes to crime? Go a step further. If we're serious about what this all is, New York City is a city of what we are because of our immigrants. We can't just talk about New York City and the history of who we are and ignore how we got here, from Ellis Island to what we are now.
I think you're deliberately blurring the distinction between legal and illegal immigrants.
I just think, first of all, it's offensive and it's racist to say illegal aliens. They're human beings. Second, as I just said, I'm a son of immigrants. And third, I answered your question. I didn't blur a line. If you don't want to agree with what I just said, that's different. But your question was, should we be a sanctuary city? I said yes. I gave facts, and I was very clear that the reasons why this is relevant is because of Republican messaging and policies. For example, ICE being sent to a school, a place of worship, or a community center is unconstitutional. You should not be allowed in unless you have a judicial warrant that's been signed by a judge. So again, the welcoming of our immigrant communities, Latino, Caribbean, African, Asian, Eastern European, etc., is what makes our city greater. And I think there's a lot of people that are watching this show and, quite frankly, working in that studio who have immigrant backgrounds who do not want to hear the rhetoric of their people and others being illegal aliens.
Michael, what did you think of how Eric Adams handled the migrant crisis and his criticism of the Biden administration?
It's one of the reasons why Eric Adams won't be mayor again. He completely bundled this. Let's be very clear. Eric Adams had an opportunity to be serious about this, but Eric Adams only cared about staying out of jail. He had an opportunity to fly down to DC to do a meeting at the White House with the mayor of Chicago and the mayor of Denver. He turned back around because his fundraiser was being raided. He literally made a decision that his campaign was more important than the city. Now, how do we address the situation at hand? First, we understand where individuals are coming from. Venezuela, China, Russia in particular, in terms of where the numbers are, in Central America, of course. Second, we embrace by ensuring that our nonprofits that are supporting our immigrant communities are being reimbursed upfront and faster with greater language access and actual connectivity to community opportunities through language access, as well as resources that are relevant to those communities where they come from and the individuals they come from. And then third is being very clear that we will not agree with, tolerate, or accept unconstitutional behavior of ICE and others coming after our communities. We do that correctly and better and well. We're then able to say to New York City that we have a $113 billion budget. Do not allow people to scapegoat our immigrant brothers and sisters that are coming here and saying we're unable to pay for our services because of them. It was $113 billion before the migration situation emerged. And it's about the seriousness of who we are as leaders that can address it in a very real way.
What do you think of Governor Hochul and her work? Are you supporting her, or will you support Richie Torres for governor?
Well, first of all, Governor Hochul is the one that's running for governor, so I don't think there's a reason to talk about hyperbole itself. Governor Hochul has been doing a very good job, but I'm focused on running for mayor. And when they all determine who is running for governor, we'll make those determinations from here. But very specifically, we want to talk about Albany and talk about the collaborations of what we have to do here to achieve a lot of the vision we want is by working collaboratively with our Albany partners. And it's impossible to be an excellent mayor if you don't have a strong relationship with the governor. And that is something that everyone has to consider. You have someone in Governor Cuomo who is trying to make a return, who clearly does not care for Governor Hochul. I think it will make it quite challenging for the city to be able to advance the causes that we need if there's a terrible relationship that happens between the two of them.
How do you see this race playing? Certainly, if you look at the polls, Andrew Cuomo is in the lead. How are you going to shake that up?
You know, at the end of the day, if polls this far out were the telling story, Hillary Clinton would have beaten Barack Obama in 2008. Anthony Weiner, Andrew Yang would be mayor right now. Elliot Spitzer would have been comptroller over Scott Stringer. Our job.
By the way, that was a hell of a gallery.
Yeah, I just wanted to give people that context, right? Of here's the dynamic here, and so our job is to make it very clear. He's going to be ahead for a while because of name recognition. He's going to be ahead for a while because he had COVID press conferences that created a feeling for people that he was stronger and better than what he actually was. I remind people, though, that the 15,000 people that are dead in nursing homes are because of a directive from Andrew Cuomo. And so to break out, we will be the person to articulate. If you're looking for someone who has actually defeated Donald Trump, Michael Blake is your candidate. If you're looking for someone who has White House, State House, and local experience, Michael Blake is your candidate. If you're looking for someone who actually has a plan on how do we help you make and keep more money, reduce your expenses, and have public safety, education, transportation, and health be a priority while fighting for you, Michael Blake is your candidate. And so to your question, our job is to show people that you do not have to go back to the failed, disastrous decisions of Eric Adams and Andrew Cuomo, that if you want a new generation of leadership, my name is Michael Blake and I want to be your mayor.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great to be with both of you.
I had a question about the
Just 1 minute.
1 minute. Thank you, Michael Blake. I really appreciate it. Like I said, on the campaign trail, running up against you and 20 others for that special election, you were like a genuine and decent human being, and that is a rare thing in the political world. And I wish you the best of luck in this race.
I really appreciate that. It means a lot. It is definitely, it's definitely a journey right here, right? And we're trying to show a city to turn the page on a current mayor and a former governor. And it requires a lot of work and a lot of time.
Yes, but we're going to change the topics.
Wait, sorry.
Okay, sounds like someone's still mad about the sanctuary city comment, but I appreciate.
No, it's not that. I'm sorry.
I appreciate that. But thank you for having me, everybody. It was great to be with you.
Thank you for watching, and we will be back from our public service announcement in just a minute. Please stay tuned. Welcome back. And now to go to national politics. The Democrats have had yet another week of showing that they have no core and no leadership. Bernie Sanders and AOC have been out there stirring up support for socialist policies. Newly famous Texas Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett has spent her time insulting the governor of her state, who lost the use of his legs while in his 20s. She called him Hot Wheels. We also learned that close to 50% of Californians are willing to vote for a Republican for governor. So what are Democrats in favor of? What are they for? What policies are they pushing besides bombing Teslas?
Well, it's been a bad couple of months for Democrats. I definitely concede there. Look, right now the party's in disarray. There seems to be a leadership vacuum. Chuck Schumer giving in on not fighting Donald Trump has raised all sorts of questions about whether he should be replaced as majority leader. I think it would be a very interesting thing to see if AOC challenged him when he's up for re-election.
She's clearly going to challenge him.
I think she's making moves, which, I think she's got a shot at taking him out. They're both going to have a tremendous amount of money. What's that?
He stayed too long at the party.
Yeah, which is, par for the course of just about every politician. And she's going to have a tremendous amount of money. She'll have the foot soldiers, and he'll have a lot of money, but I don't think he's going to have the enthusiasm going into a primary against AOC. So, where does that leave the Democratic Party right now? Who is the emergent leader? Is there a Democrat, for example, that you think Republicans are afraid of right now?
I don't think there are any Democrats Republicans are afraid of. I think there are a couple that Republicans might respect.
Like who?
Shockingly enough, John Fetterman.
John Fetterman.
John Fetterman is a moderate.
Yeah, that's part of the problem.
And he is an aggressive, outspoken, willing to defend himself in principle moderate. I think that's a great thing. I think that's what we need.
Well, that's maybe what the Republicans need. Democrats need a fighter who can go toe-to-toe with Donald Trump and the rest of the
You know what?
the
A
lot of them.
fighter, but it depends. You want a fighter in terms of personality, but it depends on what they're fighting for. And the fact that you're a fighter doesn't mean you have to fight for the most extreme left-wing policies. You need somebody who is a fighter for moderate and serious policies that actual voters want to vote for.
Right. Well, yeah, but you got to fight in order to get what you want. What we've gotten from Chuck Schumer has just been concession after concession. There doesn't seem to be
One set
any
of
sort of
concessions. And you know what?
The only leverage we have
I would
is the
call that
ability to
moderation.
filibuster a budget. We gave that away.
I would call that
Republicans
moderation.
use this every single time we have a Democrat in office. They use the debt ceiling to just bring the agenda down to get concessions that
You know
they
what?
want.
As a Republican,
Democrats never do that. Never. We're a bunch of punks. We roll
That is
over
just
every
not true.
time.
Republicans roll over for Democrats when Democrats are in power.
How many times did they bring Obama to the point of debt ceiling crises and a down rating in the bond market for the U.S. Treasuries, right? I mean,
It's been a very long time since any Republican actually allowed the government to stop working. No, they give in. The same reason. You've got to. A, it's functional, and B, it's a question of a certain kind of maturity and accommodation. You have no choice.
Yeah, the Republicans are hyper immature when they're out of power, and then when they're in power and they have the presidency, they counsel maturity to the Democratic Party. And unfortunately, the weak-kneed Democrats follow that, like Chuck Schumer, instead of actually fighting for something and using the very little power they still have.
What did he have to fight for? What policies was he going to actually fight for? More immigration, more illegal immigration?
Well, it depends on what do you want. I would suggest, prohibiting and stopping any cuts to Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid.
There are no cuts have been proposed to Medicare, Medicaid, or Social Security. None. That's a lie. That's just a made-up Democratic talking point.
It's not a lie, right? And we'll see if it winds up being on the agenda. But these are the things
Donald Trump has been very, very clear and careful about assuring his voters who are working class that there will be no cuts to Social Security or Medicare.
Yeah, but the Congress and the Senate are not so keen on that, and there has been discussion about these cuts. And, this is where the Democrats really need to stand up and stand for something. You can't rely on the goodwill of Donald Trump to save Medicare and Medicaid, and that seems to be the Democratic policy. And you're not going to get any votes by the lack of leadership that they have displayed.
On a slightly different topic, this week, the Trump administration announced plans to shut down the Department of Education and transfer important programs like student loans to other departments. This cannot officially happen without 60 votes in the Senate, which the Republicans simply don't have. But considering how much of a disaster education policy is in this country, with 60% of 8th graders not capable of reading or doing math at grade level, how useful is the DOE? Is it a good use of money? And more to the point, what should happen with education policy at state and local levels?
Yeah, this would be something that Democrats would typically get up in arms about, saving the Department of Education.
Because they are in hop to the teachers union.
Well, it's pathetic. The Department of Education, how much good does it do? Certainly not worth the amount of money that it just churns out and consumes on whatever the heck they do, and suggesting on how to do testing.
They don't even suggest testing or curriculum. There are a bunch of programs that go through the department, and they run the NAEP, the yearly assessment or every other year assessment of reading and math.
Yeah, the testing. If they actually wanted to help out teachers, that all that money would actually go to teachers, but that's not the agenda of the Department of Education.
So you know what, I think the problem is this. The problem that Donald Trump and Linda McMahon are going to have is not that they can't shut down the Department of Education, which everybody agrees is useless. It's that the teachers' unions have taken over at the state and local levels. And in fact, all of the things we consider problems, like DEI and the transgender education, is being promulgated at the state and local levels. So there's no obvious fix. If parents seem to have been cut out of the equation in a lot of these places. The red states are obviously more cooperative with parents than the blue states, but I don't see how you fix reading scores when you're concentrating on DEI instead at the state and local level if the teachers' unions are still in control.
Well, every teacher will tell you that classroom size is the answer. You reduce the classroom size, that allows you...
Most of these places are not too big.
Oh, in New York City, it's about over 30 students per class. You can't teach reading to a class of 30 or more. And classrooms...
I went to public school in New York City,
right.
And we had classes of 30, and the Department of Education in New York City was still excellent. And we were all taught to read and write and do math and science. We were taught civics. We were taught all the things people used to be taught.
Well, they're bigger.
It wasn't politicized. It's been so politicized. That's the actual problem.
Well, no, that's not the actual problem. The actual problem is kids are not getting the educational support at home that they used to. And then when they're getting into school, the classroom sizes are way too big. And if there was any real commitment to educating kids, and I agree, there's a lot to be said with the failure of the unions to actually focus on education, and they're focused on other things. There's no question about that. But if you actually ask the rank and file teachers what they need, it is smaller classroom sizes. And you don't need either right-wing ideologues or bureaucrats at the DOE to explain that. We all know it, anybody who's been a teacher.
And on that note, thank you for watching again this week, and we'll be back in a couple of weeks with more national, state, and local politics. Thanks for watching The Back Room. Good night.